So at the very beginning, I'll just kind of jump into like the options of midwives in Washington State, and then kind of give you some of my story, and then go through like the points that I have. So in Washington, there's two pathways kind of for midwives. So the first pathway is a licensed midwife, and that's someone who goes through like a state accredited program, it says there, and they go through like a 3-year educational program, and then they have to have 100 or more births that they participated in, and go through like all the clinical skills and the coursework and all of that, so they're able to be licensed that way. And the second way that I've seen more often, as far as like my personal life, people that I know, is to be a certified nurse midwife, and that's someone who starts out as a nurse, like working in a medical field, and then decides to go back to school and finish up and get their midwife like certification on top of being a nurse with that medical information. And then I kind of put this in here just to point out, I don't know, I really don't know why I put this in here. There's things called a freestanding birth center. So there's like three ways you can have a baby basically in Washington State. You can have home birth, you can go to a freestanding birth center, or you can go to the hospital. In most places, like most hospitals I've researched in our area, they'll call them birth centers, but they're really just a hospital room. Like they're still a hospital. They're not really what we might think of as like a separate like little birth center. And so these freestanding birth centers are a good alternative, like a good middle ground. It's how I wanted to have Eli, and it didn't happen, because it's a good middle ground between like not being at home if you're nervous about like wanting some more options, and then not having to be in a hospital if that's not where you want to be. And there is one of these in Portland. However, depending on your insurance, most insurance won't cross over to Portland, like if you have Washington insurance. So like depending on your situation, you might have that as an option. So I just put that in there for you to know, like those are some of the options for giving birth in our state. So I'll kind of give my story with the 2 babies that I've had, all that experience. So I had Eli in a hospital, in a birth center, quote unquote, but it was just like a glorified hospital room. And I went through a midwife clinic that there were like 5 midwives, and I was able to have like prenatal visits with all 5 and meet them. And then I got whoever was on call at the time, became like the person to actually deliver Eli. And I went that route kind of not by choice, but because of where we lived. So we lived out in the country. We were like 45 minutes from a hospital, and I wasn't comfortable doing home birth with my first baby, and we only had 1 midwife option in our entire area, and I'd heard very like sketchy things on whether or not like how qualified she was. And so I decided to go with a midwife service out of Olympia that then I thought I was getting like a birth center experience, but then once I actually toured the place, I realized it was just a hospital. But I went through them, and I had a midwife. They were more on the nurse midwife end of it. So sometimes with the nurse midwives, what I've found is that they're a little more lenient towards still being like pro-vaccine and that kind of thing, even though they're midwives. So they're like more natural, but then they also sometimes will push vaccines and things. So I had a clinic. I went there for all my prenatal. They were nice. We were just kind of finding out about like vaccinations and stuff. So we knew like we didn't want to vaccinate Eli, but every like a point when I would come home like crying to CJ about how like they'd like fearmonger me with all this information, and then he'd like have to like we'd have to like go research together, and he'd have to like talk me back out of the fact that no, we don't want to do that. So my midwife, even with that experience, was a little more on the doctor side than I would have liked. And so had Eli there, like went into labor, went up there, checked into the hospital, was able to like labor in the tub and all of that. Had him. At the time, I kind of wanted like a water birth. Like I had looked into water births beforehand, and I knew I wanted a water birth. And so, but in most hospitals, you can't actually give birth in the tub. You can only labor in the tub. And so, like with Eli, I was like freezing cold because I'd been in the tub for like an hour and a half, and it was really cold, and I was like awkward and uncomfortable, and like I gave into an epidural because I was at the point where I didn't know what to do anymore. And so, had an epidural, had him. And what I found with a hospital birth was, you know, they took good care of you and everybody's healthy, but they treat you more like a patient with an illness than they do like a natural, like that you're just doing something normal like everyday women do. And kind of to back up, I had talked to like a couple of my cousins who had had babies before I had Eli, just to find out like what their experiences were like. And my one cousin had gone through like a couple of home births with a water birth, and so like I kind of picked her brain a little bit. And then my other cousin had gone through a hospital birth, and she had said that like that same thing, like they treated you more like a patient, and she just didn't really have a great experience. They were more likely to induce you and try to get you to like have your baby on a schedule and this type of thing, and she just had like a really bad things to say about it. So I started researching and like finding blogs and information on basically which way I wanted to go with midwife versus doctor. And so that's why I went with the midwife route, because I knew that I wanted to just like be as natural as possible and figure out, just do it like I was normally supposed to do. And so in the hospital, like I said, like delivery went fine. Like I ended up getting an epidural, which looking back now, I think that I was close to transition, and I may not have actually given in to an epidural if I had been home. So like at home, you don't have an option of epidurals. So I ended up having an epidural. I went through pushing for like 3.5 hours with him. Wasn't able to like feel actually like giving birth and that kind of thing, which had kind of been important to me. So just kind of a bummer. Like a lot of like the things that I had like in my mind as to what birth was going to be like ended up not happening with him. I got skin to skin, but within like, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes, they took him away and like washed him and took him and did all like the weighing and the like the height measurement and everything. So I just remember like memories of like him crying and freaking out and like me not being able to like comfort him because like they were taking away and doing all this stuff in the room. And then 100 different people came in and out, as far as like a doctor came in that I'd never met before, and then a nurse came in, and there was like a nurse during labor who came in. I kind of met her for a little bit and she was there. And then right before I pushed, like this birthing nurse came in that was like this lady that kind of came in and like took over the whole room, like just kind of like took over the situation. And like you could tell my midwife and her had like tension. And I just remember being like, this is really awkward. I'm like about to push a baby out. They're like arguing, and it's just really awkward because they have like their standards of what's supposed to go on in the hospital versus like what the midwife thinks of. And so there's kind of those memories in my mind are just kind of some of the reasons why I chose not to go hospital afterwards, because it was just kind of weird. And then like had him, and then like in the hospital room they made you stay for like 24 hours, and they would come in and monitor him so often. And then he slept like in a bassinet next to me before like we really knew much about co-sleeping. And I just remember the nurse kept coming in and like she would like re-swaddle him like over and over again. And so I just felt like over and over again they kept making me feel like I didn't know what I was doing. Like they kept like re-swaddling, they kept moving him, she kept like adjusting him and like his breathing, and like we're checking on him. And so I just went away from the hospital but basically feeling like a totally inadequate mother, like I didn't know what I was doing with this brand new baby, and just it was an awkward experience. It wasn't something that I wanted to have again. So looked into home birth and all of those options when it came to Eiley. And so then when we lived in Vancouver, we were here in this area and it was an option because we live closer to a hospital. So I'll go over a little bit of just like the options here for home birth that I researched when it came time for Eiley, and then kind of the cost, and then breakdown of some different things that you can expect out of home birth in our area, based on my experiences. So in Clark County, we have Kathleen Wirtz. So she is who I used for all my prenatal and postpartum. And she is out, so she lives in Longview, but she does births down in Vancouver as well. So she serves both areas. And she, so she kind of has she has the 3 options kind of. So she has the ability, like the rights to go into a hospital if you have to be transferred to a hospital if there's a problem. She can do home birth anywhere in the Vancouver, like Longview, Kelso areas. And then she also has like the upstairs of her home is where she does like all her prenatal visits if you go to her home for the visits. And she has like a bed and like a bathroom and like basically like a fancy hotel room set up to where you can go have your baby at her house also. So kind of like that freestanding birth center option, like you could do it that way if you wanted at her house, and it's like 45 minutes from here. So she kind of has the whole 3 options and that kind of thing. And then Birth Babies and Beyond is the other one that I know that like Crystal's used, and then Stephanie's using, right? And then I know Greta has gone through them also for her son. And so they have 3, it's kind of like a clinic situation like when I had Eli. So they have 3 people that work for them. So there's Dr. Adeline Kell is a naturopath physician and a midwife, and she's licensed in Oregon and Washington. So lots of them down here, you'll find her licensed in both Washington and Oregon because we're right on the border. And then Alexandra Dimitro, she's also a naturopath doctor and a midwife. And then Angela Beach Hart is a certified professional midwife and licensed direct entry midwife in Oregon, and then licensed midwife in Washington. So those are the 3 that work for that group. And so so I went through Kathleen as far as all my prenatal. She actually, during labor with Eiley, she had to leave to like go try to get to another birth at the time. So she left, and Angela Beachhart from the Birth Babies and Beyond is actually who came in like as her backup and was the one to actually deliver Eiley and be there like for the first couple hours after Eiley was born. So I, like as far as my experience, I loved Kathleen, but I also really liked Angela. Like she was really great for being there for the delivery and that. And so those are like the 2 main that I know the most about and that I recommend. But there's also Mary Barnaby and her daughter Peta are also midwives here in our area. And the number's on there, the phone number. Just have that for reference. And then also in Portland, there's some different area options. And Sarah Oguchi, I've never met her. I just was recommended her by someone. And then Glow Midwifery and then Nest Midwifery. So these are the 3 areas, or the 3 options kind of that I know about in Portland. And a lot of times if you are paying out of pocket, or if you have like organ insurance, you could go to them more likely. And so with Glow Midwifery, I actually interviewed, I think her name was Angela, the lady that runs Glow Midwifery, and she was really awesome and really sweet, and I really wanted to use her, but we just couldn't afford like the out-of-pocket costs to use her because it would have been fully uninsured. So usually midwives, I just put here in a note that midwives usually offer a free consultation to meet and discuss their services. So I highly recommend that if you are wanting to go home birth route or you don't even know yet, like it doesn't hurt to at least go interview them, like, you know, when you get pregnant or even before you get pregnant, and just find out kind of what they believe and their practices and different things so that you can decide if it's a good fit for your family and for your spouse. I would recommend, like, if you go to one of these consultations, I've never done it, but I would recommend for other like people that you go with your husband. Because what I found was, like, CJ hadn't really met our midwife but more than like one time before the baby was born. So then during delivery, like, the husband's usually working alongside like the midwife a lot. Like, I mean, CJ was like filling the tub and like they were working together, and he just, like, I think that he would have preferred to like have known her a little bit better before they were doing such, I don't know, work close together, if that makes sense. Like, he just, like, I just would recommend that like your husband is comfortable with your midwife also, because it's not just you using them, like your whole, you know, family is kind of interacting with them also. And then also to remember that you're paying them to do a service. Like, when you're going and like you're interviewing these midwives, like, to hire them, you're hiring them to do a service to like help deliver your baby. You're not, a lot of times, like with the hospitals, I think doctors, especially like from my experience, doctors can make you feel like you're supposed to just do whatever they say. Like, you just do whatever they say, you do their routine, you go through their little motions of exactly what they tell you to do, you know, and it's like my way or the highway basically. And they make you feel like you're supposed to just follow because that's what they say. And even with doctors, like, you're paying them, whether you're like have insurance or not, like, you're paying them to do you a service. Like, they're doing it for you. And so make sure that they fit with you and your family, because like giving birth is a big deal, especially your first time. Like, it's a big deal, it's a lot to take on. And so you want to be comfortable with the people that you're working with and doing that. And I didn't give a list, but I could find it, like, if somebody needed it. I went to like a Google list of like a whole bunch of questions to ask your midwife, like when you first go meet with them, just about like what to expect, like the practices, the cost, all this stuff, so that you have a good idea, like before you even like commit to like using them, that you have an idea of what to expect throughout the whole process. I really recommend just kind of doing your research with that. So here I broke down the cost for our area. So in our area, it's between $4,000 and $5,000 out of pocket if you don't have insurance, just like depending on the midwife. That's like your upfront full cost. I think it was around like over $5,000 it would have been, like, to use the Glow Midwifery if we had gone with them in Portland, because they can do Vancouver births. They just, I would have had insurance them. And then you'll end up needing to get a birth kit, and if you want to do a water birth, which most midwives I think kind of tack that on and have you, even if you're just laboring in the tub, as an option. The birth tub rental for me was $100 on top of what insurance didn't cover, and then the birth kit has like all kind of like their supplies, like what they would have at the hospital and stuff, and different things that they need for during labor and then right after post delivery. So we don't like have insurance normally. I don't have insurance. My husband does through work, but we're not able to like be on it, and so I actually qualify for state insurance when I'm not, or when I'm pregnant, only when I'm pregnant. And so state insurance, these options I gave up here are mostly what I'd researched that state insurance would cover. So if you're in a situation where, you know, you only qualify for state insurance during pregnancy, like, this is the options that I'm familiar with. And then if you have state insurance, it won't reimburse the midwives 100% of the cost. So like with Kathleen Wirtz, it would be $500 was what we had to pay on top of it, plus like the kit and the rentals and all that. And then with Birth Babies and Beyond, they asked for like a $1,200 donation or like added on fee for what the state insurance won't cover. And then I know with other insurance, it really just depends on your plan. So like obviously you'll have to look into like what specifically works for you and your insurance plan at the time, based on what they'll cover. But I haven't heard of an insurance out there that doesn't cover a home birth, at least partially, because that's usually included. I mean, you know, if state insurance covers it, most places usually cover it. I know Kaiser, because I looked into that a little bit, because that's what CJ has if like we ever were to go on it. They say they cover home birth. It's a little tricky. Like, I would have to look into it more as far as like the wording of how it works. But I know Kaiser covers part of home birth. But Kaiser is also very specific on like having to go to Kaiser places like for your care. So that would be something you'd have to research if that's what you have. And then I know another common insurance is like the Samaritan's Ministries one. I know like a lot of people that we know use that. And I looked into that at the time for Eiley also, but you have to like have been using Samaritan's Ministries and like paying into that insurance before you get pregnant. Like, you can't, like if you're already pregnant, they won't cover you unless they add it to like a special prayer list, and then like it might get covered, might not. And with that, and there's also some wording that's changed. I know there's like been a recent change with if you only have like just yourself on it, it doesn't cover it like after, like you have to like reach a certain deductible before you can actually have it covered. Like you'd almost have to have like 2 people on Samaritans if that was like your insurance, and then get pregnant and then have them cover. If that kind of makes sense. And so a midwife will provide a list of items you'll need to supply for your home birth. So just kind of going along with like the added costs, that they'll have items that aren't necessarily like part of the birth kit that you'll also need like the hose for like filling the tub, and like we connected it to our washer and dryer, or you can connect it to like your faucet in the sink. Like they'll work with you on where to put that. So like you'll need like a hose, like waterproof mats for underneath the tub to have like waterproof barriers. I highly recommend these tablecloths. They're like rectangle tablecloths with like the flannel backing, and then they're like just like normal tablecloth on the other side. I got 2 of those from Walmart for like $5 a piece or something, and that's what we put down underneath because that way it doesn't slip, but it's still waterproof. So things like that you'll need, and then extra towels and sheets and a waterproof liner like for your mattress. So one of the things that's really awesome about home birth is you can give birth anywhere. You can give birth in your kitchen, you can give birth in your bedroom, you can give birth in the tub if you want. I mean, your options are completely open when you're at your house, and just, I mean, because like I have a cousin who's had 3 home births, and like, I think out of all 3, she tried water birth, and only like her second or third it actually ended up being born in the water, because each time she ended up being like in a different room when it actually came time to push. And so, you know, that can happen. So like you might have like your water birth planned and like think, oh, I'm only gonna give birth here, but you wanna make sure that like your whole house is kind of like ready for birth, basically, you know, because all the stuff that goes with that. So like, so I had like a shower curtain and like double mattress line just in case I gave birth in bed, or like in case, you know, you're on the couch or something. You just want to have definitely extra towels and precautions and things to throw down, because in the mid, I mean, like it happens fast. If all of a sudden it's ready to push and you're somewhere else, like you want to have things set up so that you're not ruining your furniture and your like everything, because you know, in a sense, like you do have to be a little bit more prepared than in a hospital where they already have all that stuff ready to go. So things like that you'll need to have provided. So there is there's a cost obviously involved in home birth, but just based on my experience, it's way worth it compared to the hospital, because just how much more comfortable you are. And like one of my favorite things is that, you know, I end up having Eiley in the water, like had like my picture perfect like birth, like the way that I imagined it and dreamed it, and like I feel like it couldn't have gone better than, like I had like visions of it, like it went perfect. And so I am a really big advocate for home birth because it went so well and I had a good experience. And like I was able to have Eiley in the water, and then like she was covered in like all like the white verdicts, and I got to like let that just soak into her skin for like 2 weeks. Like I didn't give her a bath for 2 weeks because they don't make you give her a bath when you're at home. You can do whatever you want. And like the nurse, like the midwives aren't going to force you to give them a bath, and they're not going to do it for you. Like, so those are some of the different things too. Like the hospital is going to automatically do stuff that you may or may not want to do, whereas the midwife is going to be like, you're the mom, like you decide, or like you're the parents, you decide. So things like that, like so I didn't have a bath. You know, I got to like go straight into my own bed and like lay down and be comfortable with like me and my family. You know, she got to nurse and be skin to skin. They didn't touch Eiley for like over an hour, I think. So she basically like, they just they kind of backed off. They were like, okay, you're good to go. You're nursing her. Like they walked out, left the room, and they just left me like with privacy. Like I got to have like just me and my husband and my baby and like just chill for like an hour or more until they even came in. And then they weighed her, but they weighed her like in the little like blanket, like little scale thing. And it was just like so much more peaceful than the hospital had been, with like my screaming like child like in this plastic thing, like, you know, 10 feet away from me where I couldn't help him, and, you know, versus like being like right there on the bed, like where I got to like help hold her like as they're doing it. And so the experience overall was a lot better in my opinion with that. And, you know, and then the midwives are still there. Like they come in and check like 1 day after, and then like a week after, and I think even like 3 weeks and 6 weeks, like it depends on their practice, but like they'll come in and check on you. So they're still coming back and making sure that like all the medical side of stuff is taken care of, but you get to be in your own home when they do that. So it's kind of nice. So that's like just my experience and my like really big push for home birth. Like I really advocate home birth. So prenatal care, I'm just gonna kind of go through the notes some more. What you can expect from prenatal care with a midwife, from my experience, is that they'll do things like they'll draw your blood at the beginning. So like you'll get like a blood draw, usually like your first appointment, where they'll check and make sure that you have like all your levels are all good and everything. Some of the options are things like a glucose screening. So that's to check for gestational diabetes, and that usually happens between 24 and 28 weeks of pregnancy. And that again with a midwife, with my midwife experience through the hospital and through like the clinic, my only option was like this really nasty like sweet drink that they make you take, and then they check at like 1 or 3 hours after like your levels to make sure how you react to it, and then from there they decide if you have gestational diabetes. Whereas like the Glow midwifery that I recommend, she talked about how you can like eat like a really sweet breakfast and then get checked a couple hours later. I mean, so like midwives are a little less concerned about stuff like that, and they treat it more like give options, whereas like sometimes a hospital, they don't give you the options of that. So that is something to be aware of, that'll come up at 24 to 28 weeks, be a conversation to have with your midwife. Some midwives, depending on your midwife, now I don't think like Birth Babies and Beyond, I don't think they push like vaccines, right? Like they haven't pushed much of that. My midwife, so Kathleen, she gave me like her, like, I don't know, 5-minute spiel about like, obviously she was pretty pro-vaccine. But then once I made it known like that, well, we weren't interested, she backed off and never really brought it up again. So most midwives will kind of give you room to like be like, okay, like, they like to give you options. So they believe in like the parent being responsible for researching it themselves and trusting your decision. My experience in the hospital is that they tried to push vaccines like over and over and over again, as far as like the doctor came in and talked about it, and then like the nurse came in and talked about it, and then like the next day they kept giving me all this like information on why if I didn't give vitamin K to my son, he was going to die, and like his brain was going to bleed out and all this stuff, and like they do a lot more fear mongering with that. And then let's see, so that, and the little ultrasound sometimes at like 8 to 12 weeks, but like I only did the one 20-week ultrasound with Eiley. I did one at 8 weeks and at 20 weeks with Eli. But I also know of midwives that like if you just say I don't want any ultrasounds, they'll respect that and say, okay, that's fine. So they're way more open to those options. But usually the 20-week obviously is like where you find out the gender and stuff if that's what you want to do. And then they will do a strep B swab. So I had this with both mine. I don't know, I haven't researched too much on whether like why I wouldn't have done it, but I did it just to find out, just make sure safer, because during delivery things can happen from that when the fluids mix and everything. So strep B is another one that's a pretty routine thing that they'll do, and I think that's around like 34, 36 weeks. So after baby is born, what to expect at a home birth. They will do, like they did the weight, the height, the head circumference. My midwife came back like the day later and did do like the heel prick. So that's another thing that you'll have to research and discuss if you want to do the heel prick test, and that's where they like they do like a heel prick, and then they put it on a piece of paper and then they send it off to the state, and it's basically checking for different like chromosomal like diseases and syndromes and things of their tendencies. So it's just like another check that they do. And then there will be an option of like, I just said it's called eye goop. I'm sure there's like I know that there's probably like the medical version, but it's like an eye goop that they put on, like an eye, like Vaseline stuff on their eyes. And then like the vitamin K. So those are two, the eye goop and the vitamin K are like those immediately after birth things that some midwives still push and will do. We didn't do either with Eiley. We did do oral vitamin K with Eli, just because my midwife had scared me so bad that he was gonna like die like immediately after birth. Like she like really scared me about it. And then after I did more research after he was born and everything, like we didn't do it with Eiley because I realized that God naturally designed babies to like increase their vitamin K around 7 to 9 days old, which is like perfect with what the Bible says. And so, but those are like the two things that they will give you an option of with midwives. My midwife, and I'm pretty sure most midwives, they're not able to give vaccines. So like they can't give the vaccines to your baby. You would have to like go to your pediatrician if that's even something that you would want to do, which like I said, we didn't with ours. But that's one thing that's not, it won't be pushed because they can't even do it with a home birth, whereas the hospital, it's, they have it on tap. And then right after baby's born, like I highly recommend like skin to skin and then delayed cord clamping. So I think it was like 12 or 15 minutes. I was looking back at my like stuff from birth, and I think it was 12 minutes that Eiley was like attached with like the cord before they clamp it. So that's just like, because that continues to give nutrients to baby after they're born, whereas often times at the hospital they'll just cut it right away and like cut the cord. But there's no, it's better for baby based on my like what I've experienced and researched for them to kind of still get the nutrition from the cord and that for a little bit longer before they cut it. Yeah, so those are some of the options that you'll have right after. So during home birth, some more of what to expect. So by law, 2 midwives must be present like during the birth. So, or one that's in training and one's like a student midwife. So for me, I had like my midwife Kathleen, and then she had to have her student midwife there with her. And then when my midwife actually left during my birth with Eiley, because she had to go catch another birth, and she brought in like a backup, who's the Angela, like I was talking about. Angela came as a backup, so then there was like still the 2 midwives there. And it was planned for my midwife, the student midwife, and like a birth assistant to be there, like as well as my husband and I. But then because my labor went so fast, like the 3rd person wasn't able to make it. But usually they'll bring like a assistant, because a midwife will try to have like those 2 that they have to have, and then sometimes a 3rd person just to help with like, getting everything ready and the supplies and stuff. So that's kind of who you expect to have at your birth. Some women choose to hire a doula. I looked into it with both and just decided that that wasn't something that we wanted to do as a family, but I know some women prefer that because I think with the doula, my opinion on it is just it depends on how you and your husband are. Because if you feel like your husband is going to be as supportive enough to, like, you know, rub your back, help calm you, you know, hold a wet, like, towel to your forehead to, like, keep you cooled out. Like, if you feel like your husband and you have a good enough communication on, like, helping kind of the nurturing part of it, I think that there's no real need for a doula, just like, in my opinion. But some women really like them because the doula is kind of like half medical side, half just like supporting you during labor side. And so some people like to have them if their husband is maybe like more nervous or not really sure about like all that's to be expected. Just because, you know, they've experienced births, like they've gone through it and they can help. But they're also more money, and so I haven't found that there was a need for one. But that is another option and sometimes like your midwife will have people that they recommend and stuff like that if that was at all interesting for you. My main tip is to make sure you have your birth kit and your supplies organized and ready, preferably. Like my midwife wanted a table set out, so like a couple days before my due date I made sure like my table was all ready and everything was all cleared off and set to go, because when they come in they're gonna like come in their bags, and depending on how fast labor is going, like they're gonna set all their stuff up and get everything going. So you want to have that organized and ready and easily accessible. And then you want to like have the hose. You'll want to know where your hose is going to be hooked up for your birth tub, and like be ready to fill it when your midwife tells you to. And then one thing that was recommended that I kind of wish that we had the space, if you have like an extra room in your house, I would recommend blowing your tub up like a couple days before your due date and just having it like already blown up like in a set aside room. Most of us I know probably don't have just like a random extra bedroom laying around, so I blew mine up like in the middle of labor, like it just happened. It comes like a pump and stuff and they blow it up. It only takes about like 12-15 minutes to blow it up, so it's pretty quick. But if you have an extra room, you can set it aside, or you can just have it ready. So you want to like obviously have mapped out like where you plan to put it in your house and all of that. And then your midwife will arrive and they'll remain as long as you need them. So my midwife she was telling me that like by law she was supposed to stay for 4 hours after the baby was born, but then the midwife that was actually there and then like the student, they stayed for about 2 hours after Riley was born and then they left. So that's another thing about home birth is they kind of stay and make sure you're good and then they leave you alone. Whereas hospitals, they check in like every hour or like every 15 minutes, it feels like, to like, yeah, take your temperature and do all this invasive stuff. So it was a little bit of that. So I'm going to kind of stop really quick if I'm rambling. Are there any questions about like just those pieces of it? Does anybody have questions? Okay.
This is a silly question, but I've never heard of delayed cord clamping before.
Okay.
I don't think. So when they don't cut the cord, so it is still connected to the placenta? Or
yes.
All right, so once you deliver the placenta, then they cut it?
Yeah. Yeah, so like when I researched, they said like some people will keep it like for like an hour or something. Like some people like keep it for like a really long time to keep it. But then, yeah, so it depends. Mine, I mean, like I didn't deliver, it was like 5-10 minutes after was like when, like yeah, I think 12 months was like when mine was cut. So I think, yeah, like once you deliver it, they say they'll cut it, but some people take longer to deliver it, I think, and so it just stays connected because it gets all like the blood, you know, into the baby and stuff. Yeah. So that was, but
well, it's
yeah.
their blood supply too.
Yeah, right, and it gives them like, I think like extra oxygen and that kind of stuff, yeah.
Which I heard helps in the case of jaundice as well.
Yeah, that's further research.
What I was going to ask you, did you experience jaundice with Eileen, or did you experience that with Eli?
Neither of them had jaundice, no.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
But with Eli, you didn't do vitamin K?
We did the oral vitamin K.
Okay, yeah.
So, and like a pediatrician came in and kind of like helped. Like at first he was pushing the shot, but then he was like, oh, well, I can help you figure out like how many drops. So we did like the drops, like so many for like the next week or whatever after he's born. I don't even know if we finished the drops, to be honest.
Did you
Can't remember.
do the delayed clamping with Eli?
No,
Okay.
we just cut, and yeah, it wasn't as like, that was it. Things happen like really fast in the hospital. I feel like the hospital was kind of like they did it, they took care of it, and then yeah, it was different.
In the hospital, did they have anybody help? Like you said, you left inadequate. Did anybody help you with the nursing? You know, like giving a good lap.
So
a lactation come in.
So yeah, that like there was like a lactation consultant, I think she came like that night. So the birth nurse at the time like kind of came over and like made sure he was he latched pretty good right away, and like, and I was fine. And I had a cousin that was like a Leche leader. Like I'd like researched a lot about it, so I felt like I was kind of confident doing it. But I remember her kind of like bossing me around on how to position him, and I was like, well, he seems like he's nursing to me, and she was like, well, it's supposed to be like this. So she kind of like, she helped. But then like that night, the lactation lady came in, and same thing. She told me that I was doing it wrong, and kind of tried to like fix him and adjust him, and then kind of left. Like she didn't come back after that. So So yeah, there was support, but I just kind of felt like it was like not, I don't know, it was just, yeah.
And with Eiley, you didn't need the support, or is that something that like if it was your first time?
Oh yeah, so if this was your first time, they will. Like the midwives have a lot of training and knowledge in breastfeeding. Like they will help you. And I think, yeah. And so like with Eiley, I don't know, I didn't have, because yeah, it was my second. So like I had been nursing, Eli, and so like that, she latched on right away and was good and it was fine. They checked that though, like she checked and was like, making sure she's nursing, like is she getting fed, and yes, and like she kind of checked and then moved on. But they have knowledge to where if you are struggling or don't know, like they will help you. And I just found that anything I asked them, they were way more just like sweet about it, like more.
So not to be a question, but one last thing.
Yeah.
When you gave birth in the water, I've talked to some women and they have torn with each child and they felt that maybe it was because of the water birth. So when you had Eiley, did you have the option where they help massage you and get that area? Because in the water you pickle.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, how is that with the water?
Yeah, so I was fortunate. I didn't tear with either. Like I had like minor tears but not needing stitches. So like I tore with both in that way. And the water, she like helped like apply pressure like with her hand and stuff like when I was pushing. But didn't necessarily like do anything beforehand. But I think that they, like they know how to, like, cause yeah, like she helped like hold for me to like know where to push and that kind of stuff. So she was kind of down there a little bit, I guess, if that makes sense.
Because I did have a friend that was looking into maybe getting to where they'll massage with the oil and get that softened.
Yeah.
To prevent future tearing.
I think there's options for that. I know like midwives will usually give you like, do you want that or those types of things. Because I've even, like when I had done my research, it said that sometimes having a water birth prevents tearing more because you're more like loose down there. So I think it depends on the woman and stuff. But yeah. Okay, so I'll just go into kind of like my tips. Sorry, yeah.
What was it about not giving the baby a bath? What were you talking about?
So babies, there's like vernix, like the white, like, I don't know, it's white, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like all like the white stuff that's on the outside of the baby that's in the womb. So that is like their natural like lotion that helps like, can like moisturize in their skin. But at the hospital, they often like want to like wash that off really quick because the babies like have, they actually had like blood and like the vernix and stuff on them. And so if you allow your baby to just let them soak that in, it's like lotion for them and it's good for them. Whereas at the hospital, I think because it's like kind of gross, like they just want to wash it off really fast. Does that make sense?
And you let that stay on for 2 weeks, you said?
Yeah, because it becomes lotion, like it goes right into her skin. Because I was kind of nervous too, I'm like, she's really white, and then they're like, it'll go in. And within, I don't even remember when, because like I didn't even notice it. It was within like 20, 30 minutes, like it was gone. Like it had wafted into her skin. So it absorbs, like it goes away. And I don't know, like I didn't feel like she stunk or like that. Like she just, I don't know, I really enjoyed like being able to just keep her sweet, safe, like, baby skin for a couple weeks. So yeah, because, depending on your delivery, there is some, gross parts of that, if you're like, oh, my baby looks disgusting, you might be tempted to like wash them off, but,
And you were able
but it
to
goes,
rub that in.
yeah, just rubbed it right in. It was like her hair even like didn't look greasy, it just went right in.
Which makes sense considering like you don't even give a full bath to a baby until the umbilical cord completely comes off anyway.
Yeah, right.
So
Yeah.
if you're concerned about the sneakiness or about being unclean,
Yeah.
you really don't fully submerge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's different. Okay, so the tips this is kind of like just my random, like, because I feel like I focused a lot on like the midwife aspects and things, but I did want to just focus on like what I found that worked for me, and you can take it or leave it as far as different ideas. So the first thing is the Bradley method is a recommended method for labor to help with pain and that kind of stuff. And there are classes that are offered like in Portland and Vancouver around here that you can do. I can't remember the price on them. They cost money though. So they were extra money, and then they would have been like, a lot of them like in the evenings and stuff, and it just didn't coordinate with like our schedule for like CJ and I to go do it with kids. But Husband Coast Childbirth, the Bradley Method of Natural Childbirth is a book that's from the Bradley Method. So I got it from the library and had enough just information from that book that I felt like I took some tips without having to like go take an actual class. But if you're able to, I think that sometimes like actual childbirth classes can help you to be more ready, because I hadn't actually like practiced a lot of the things that I read about. Whereas if you go and practice them, you and your husband and get an idea. So if you're financially able, I think that they can be really helpful to people that are able to do them if they work for you. But the Bradley method, I was able to, it helped me during labor. So Eiley's labor was way faster than Eli's. And so I felt like I didn't have to like cope quite as much as I did with Eli's, but I was not as like calm. Like I feel like I didn't handle it as well as I wanted to. Like I imagined myself like being more chill, and then I wasn't. But what I found, because the one thing they stress in that book is that like if you're loud or like you're supposed to like, what do they say? You're supposed to like grunt or groan and not like scream, like kind of is like the way they put it. Whereas, I don't know, I was loud during like labor, and that's just, it worked for me, and my baby came out and she wasn't like, you know, distressed. So they make it sound like if you like make any noise during labor, your baby's gonna like be in distress. So I felt like it was fine. So, and another plug on that really quick, I know people have said like that they wouldn't want to have a home birth in an apartment because of like the noise and the different things. So we live in a tiny little, I mean, you guys have been, like, we live like in a tiny little house that's like, you know, a few feet away from our neighbors in a small neighborhood. I gave birth in the middle of the afternoon on a Monday. So like, there were people like out, you know, it was the middle of the summer, like there were people around. So I'm sure people heard me and I just don't care. Like it hasn't been like awkward, like, you know, that is it. So I think, yes, an apartment's like a little bit closer spaces, but you're still about as close to people in an apartment as you could have been like where I lived, and it's, you know, it's doable. So if you're afraid of like having a home birth in an apartment, I would recommend you do it, because you're not going to care. Like you're not going to be worried about like what people are thinking when you're in the middle of labor, you know, if they're a wall away. And just for like the comfort, it's, I don't know, I think it's so worth it. Whether people hear you outside the walls or not, that's their problem. Like, I don't know, they're not going to like kick you out of the apartment for not, you know, for being too loud because you're giving birth. So, and I haven't researched, I don't think that like apartments can tell you can't have a home birth. I don't even know if that's like a thing. You might want to look into your lease there. I don't know. I've never heard of that. Like I think I've known people that gave birth in apartments. So
I know that
so it's doable.
that they, like if you move into an apartment, they'll let you know that you need to let them know if you have a water bed and stuff like that.
Oh, that makes sense.
I wouldn't imagine that the tub, you know.
Yeah. And maybe, and definitely, like, I would talk to your midwife, because I know, like, my midwife had delivered a bunch of babies in apartments. So I think, I'm sure that they would have knowledge of, like, you know, how to address that with your people, so. So I would also recommend, I watched a lot of, like, home birth and water birth videos on YouTube and read a lot of articles about it, like, leading up to the birth. And I would recommend those. Some people say, like, that'll scare you. I think it's the opposite. It makes you, like, ready for the reality of it. Because, I mean, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. It hurts. It's not like all like roses and sunshine. Like it's, you know, having labor, and especially like your first is usually longer. Like my second was way faster. You know, but if you want to go all natural and you don't want an option epidural, and you like, you know, your body is capable of giving all natural birth. And so but sometimes it can go on for hours, and you can feel like, especially with like I felt like I was just like at my breaking point. Whereas if you're able to like have, like, it is a mindset. Like you have to get your mind ready to like take on like this huge thing. So you have to like. So I thought it was really important to watch YouTube videos, to see what it looks like, to like, you know, kind of get an idea of what it's actually going to be like, just to help you wrap your mind around it. You know, and there's some that are better than others. Like I tried to go find some to give links to, but some of the ones that I watched, like they were gone. And so I'd have to research a little bit more. But if you wanted like YouTube videos that I watched, I could send you some clips that help you, because there were some that were better than others as far as showing what I felt like it actually was like. So, and then you'll want things like electrolyte water. So the other thing, in the hospital, they totally like don't like you to eat and drink a lot, whereas at home, like they recommend that you eat and like keep your strength up and stuff. So like you know, you want snacks, you want to have like electrolyte water and stuff to sip on. You know, in my case, I threw it right back up, but at least like it was like not the whole time, but like I mean, like you know, you're likely to throw it back up, but at least you have it to help keep you hydrated, because that's a long, strenuous thing that you're doing. I recommend a cold washcloth for like dabbing your forehead if you're doing a water birth, because it's very comfortable, but and if you're in there for like a long time, you get kind of hot. A birthing ball, which is basically like a yoga ball, I found was really helpful in those last few weeks of pregnancy, or like when you're starting to get uncomfortable in pregnancy. And then they also help with like early labor, just to keep yourself comfortable while you're in those first couple hours of labor. You want lots of like comfortable pillows and things to be able to support. So pillows are really helpful in like supporting different positions. And these are things too that you can look up online. I mean, there's tons of different like labor positions that can be helpful to get through the pain, you know, like hands and knees and on your side, and like putting a pillow between your legs, and like on a birthing ball, things like that. And like one of the other like really comfortable like ways to find relief is having a water birth where you have like the tub, because it's like a blown up tub, so like you can like hang onto the side and like just kind of go through contractions that way, which is really helpful. Another recommendation, maybe like soft music. I like soft like instrumental hymns in the background, just kind of help you calm. Keep moving. Like sometimes like I would like freeze up, and like my husband had to remind me like just keep moving and like get through the pain, because when you move, obviously it goes quicker than if you're just sitting there like in agony with your contractions. You'll have snacks for the midwives and for yourself during labor if it lasts a long time. Definitely have your hospital bag packed. So I know like Greta didn't have her hospital bag packed, and then she ended up being transferred to the hospital. So I remember her saying like she wished she had had that. So you want to make sure you have a hospital bag packed with like, you know, your extra clothes and like all your things that you'll need for after the baby comes, just in case you are transferred during labor. Have a trash can handy. Like I said, I ended up throwing up. And then, yeah, I think I said I put hospital bag twice, nice. Postpartum tips. So this one right here is like my #1 recommendation to every pregnant woman in the entire universe, like forever again. So in the hospital, they will give you what's called, well, at least mine did, Dermaplast, and it's like a spray that helps. So when you give birth, you have a lot of changes that happen down there, and there'll be a lot of pain and a lot of recovery, and stuff will just change a lot. And so one of the things they recommend is like this spray that like helps to numb, like when you go to the bathroom and stuff like that. But this stuff, this Earth Mama Organic Perineal Balm, it used to be called Mama Bottom Balm, but now it's changed the name recently. It's like really amazing. So I highly recommend this because I used the Dermaplast and it didn't, like it like gives you like some relief and comfort for a little bit and then it like fades. Whereas this stuff is like cooling and really, I don't know, it was amazing. It was really helpful in like postpartum. So I recommend this stuff. And then you want to have like lots of pads of various sizes and things like that for the bleeding afterwards. A good water bottle is good for nursing because you want to be hydrated when you nurse right away. Nursing takes a lot of calories. You want to have lots of snacks and things prepared. I highly recommend doing like freezer crock pot meals. So I like pretty much like once a paycheck for the last like 5 months pregnancy, I would just set aside like a little bit of our budget once a paycheck and go out and get extra ingredients. And I would do like double a batch or whatever I was taking for dinner. And then I would just set aside the second batch in the freezer. That way it was ready. So I had like a couple months, not a couple months, about a month of like freezer meals afterwards. Because once, I mean like, it was really nice. Like we have like the meal train and stuff through church. And then like, you know, your husband's there to help cook for a little bit if he gets time off work right away. But then once your husband goes back to work and life like resumes to normal, like it's really nice to have like crock pot meals to just pull out and use. Because that way, I mean, you don't really want to be like cooking in the kitchen when you're trying to figure out everything with a new baby. So I recommend that. And then coconut oil was like my best friend as far as for breastfeeding because you'll be sore and, you know, learn how to do it. And so coconut oil is really helpful just in, they also sell like different like nursing, like creams and things you can get, but I just found that coconut oil was the easiest and it worked the best. They will give you these really cool mesh underwear at the hospital that you won't get when you're at home birth unless they're part of your birth kit, which they were part of like mine a little bit, and then I went and bought extra ones. But you just want to make sure you have like comfortable underwear and stuff because you're not going to be in your normal clothes for a little bit. You'll pretty much feel like you're wearing a diaper for like a couple weeks, so it's cool. And then a breastfeeding basket is another recommendation to have, like just set aside with like extra nursing pads and burp rags and snacks and like the coconut oil for breastfeeding and because you're going to spend a lot of time just sitting down nursing your baby for like those first few days. So you want to have kind of your go-to stuff there so you don't have to get up a lot. And then lactation cookies are really amazing because they help you with your milk supply as well as they're really tasty and nutritious. So I have some go-to recipes if you guys are, you know, when you get to that point, if you want any to share. So yeah, and I think that's pretty much all I have. I was just going to do like more questions if anybody had any. And I think that, yeah.
You know with the breastfeeding, the birth control, you guys do that?
Do we do?
Like, because I was talking with someone at work, and I was telling them the breastfeeding is a natural birth control if you follow the steps that are appropriate.
Right, so we found that it worked for us. Yeah, well, I mean, some women are different. So like for me, I don't get my cycle back until like almost a year after, and that's with breastfeeding. But I've also known women that breastfeed fully and they get their cycle back like a few months into it. And so it's not guaranteed. I mean, it depends on your body and it depends on your genetic makeup basically. Because if you're the type of woman that gets your period back right away, I mean, it's no guarantee. But at the same time, like even beyond like that coming back, I mean, breastfeeding kept me, I'm trying to think, Eli was 27 months when Eiley was born. So that means he was, 18 months. 18 months when I got pregnant with Eiley. And so that was 18 months of fully breastfeeding. And like I had my cycle back before that, not that you know that, but like I had it back before that, but like breastfeeding still kept me like safe as far as from conceiving.
18 months? Because I remember I was researching a little bit about it. They said that it's up to 6 months and then so it doesn't work anymore.
So I've heard that too, but I don't know, it's worked for us. So I think that can also sometimes depend on if you do on demand. So if you put your baby on a schedule and say like, I know women that say like they'll nurse their baby every couple hours and won't let them eat in between. or like they'll try to put their baby on a schedule. So if you do that, like that can mess it up. You have to like breastfeed on demand. So, and something I've been surprised at with Eiley, because Eiley slept through the night from like 2 weeks. And that made me nervous that I was gonna like not have that as birth control, because they say that it's like, you know, it's like the demand. So if they're like breastfeeding every few hours, it keeps it up. Whereas, so she was going up to like 8 hours between feedings, and it still worked for us. I mean, we're 13 months postpartum and I'm not pregnant, so like it works.
You have to breastfeed them on demand, and also you can't, and after they've gotten their cycle back, it's done, right? After that point, if you get your cycle back, if it doesn't work anymore?
I don't know, it's still working for us, so I don't know. I mean, it depends on the woman. It's less likely. Like, I think that it's less likely depending on how much they're eating. It also depends on like when you introduce solid foods to your baby. So like, Eli didn't eat solids till he was 21 months old, so like my milk was all that kept him. So I think that's what kind of kept us like birth control longer, was the fact that he was eating. However, Eiley is eating pretty well at a year, and I'm like, it's still working for us. So it really depends on your baby. I mean, if your baby is like eats tons of solids and quits breastfeeding as much during the day, you're more likely to conceive. But so it just kind of depends on the baby and stuff. But yeah, on demand like has worked for us.
Yeah,
so.
I told this kind of the guy at work, he was cussing me out. Like, he was really mad about it too. I was like, man.
See, I think there's plenty of people out there like that we know too that are proof that it works. I mean, for the most part, but I don't know.
It's on Planned Parenthood, not that I agree with Planned Parenthood. F you and Planned Parenthood. I was like, wow.
Yikes.
Well, and I recently spoke with a pastor's wife that had trouble with like her 6th, 7th child, and he was not happy nursing, and so she actually resorted to bottle feeding. And then she found out, I think after not even nursing for like, I mean, it was just really hit and miss and pumping as much as she could into a bottle, that if she did exclusively night feeding, not just exclusively, but he would do it, and that he would suck all night long, and that has helped also keep her cycle from coming back as well.
Yeah.
That if there's a constant suckling going on, that's also a good thing.
Yeah.
And she's kept hers at bay with just the night feeding strictly now.
Yeah.
He will not do it during the day.
So that's hard. Yeah, and that's where it's just based on like each woman. Because I mean, there's no hard and fast rule. We're all, you know, different. And so, you know, I mean, to say that for us it's worked, and I think that for the most, like percentage-wise, probably for the most, if you're really nursing on demand and nursing throughout the night and all of that, it usually works. But it's not guaranteed. So.
And how long did it take you to deliver, Eli?
So Eli, my labor was like 27 hours with Eli, and I pushed for 3.5 hours, which, what makes me annoyed, this is another like thing against hospital birth, is that I'm pretty sure, so Eiley, I was 8 hours of labor and I pushed for like less than 30 minutes. So based on experience in an all-natural birth with Eiley, I believe that I was probably almost a transition, which is like your hardest point of labor right before you push. I believe I was like almost a transition with Eli, and if I had held out like a little bit longer and not gotten an epidural, I think he would have been born faster. But once you get an epidural, everything slows down. Like your body slows down and like stops being in like active labor. So like I went through like a good hour more like where like nothing was happening and like kind of slowed down, and then like they had to like give me stuff to like ramp it back up, because it's like the doctor's like jumping in and trying to affect your labor. So
why did they give you that?
So the epidural like kind of stopped labor and like slowed it down. So they had to give me something to like help my body to start contracting again.
Why did they give you the epidural?
Because I asked for it, because I was to the point of, because it was, I mean, and that's the one thing about, because it's hard, especially with your first one, like it's painful, like it's hard. And so, and I had back labor with Eli, and so like I said, like, if at home it wouldn't have been an option. I would have had to just like deal with it and get through. But because my midwife, I like didn't realize at the time, I thought she was more supportive like against epidurals, and she wasn't. She was like, well, it's 50-50. You could be in this position for like 6 or 7 more hours. And so I was just kind of like, okay, I can't do that, so give me an epidural. So I cave into it because it was in the middle and it was hard. So that's where it goes back. Like you really have to like be in the mindset, because labor is hard. So you have to like be ready to like do it no matter what, even like, and that's the thing, like as a husband, like you want your husband to be on board, because CJ like was on board with no epidural, but then he was kind of like, he saw how much pain I was in, so he was like, no, it's fine, just do it. And I was like, I feel like I'm failing. He's like, no, you're fine. Whereas if you like really are like, okay, like, you know, like you tell your husband like, do not let me get one, or, you know, like don't let them be an option, I think it changes. But then also like, you're not a failure because you do get one either. Like I think that, your baby's still delivering, it's fine. With my experience, like everybody's different. So everybody, you know, will choose like what's best for them. With Eli, he was kind of like sleepy and didn't nurse super well for the few days following. And I got kind of nervous, and like I called my friend or my cousin who's a nurse, and I was like, what's going on? Like, he's not nursing. She's like, it's probably a lot of like just like the drugs leaving his body, because like they leave through me to him, and from the epidural. So I think that there were a little bit of like ramifications from that. But some people are fine and their baby's fine. So it just, I wouldn't feel like you're a failure, because I mean, hundreds of thousands of millions of women have babies with epidurals and are fine every day. It just.
But with the home birth, you cannot have it.
No, you don't have an option unless they transfer you to a hospital.
Okay.
So.
But that's good.
Yeah.
But and I think going back to what you said, when you reach that point of pain and you're like, I want an epidural, you usually are at a point where you're about to transition right into it. And I think that, like you said.
Yeah, that's why I hate looking back, because I'm like, oh, I probably could have made it if I wasn't sitting in the freezing
right
cold.
there.
Yeah, so the epidural numbs you to where you can't feel any from like your waist down.
Does everything go back to normal like as soon as like it's done though? Like is there any like feeling that you lose like afterwards? You know how sometimes.
I like everything went back to normal for me. Like it took a while. I'm like I was pretty numb for like a couple hours or an hour or so after. But then I've heard of people that like it can have. Like it's very low percentage, but it can like paralyze some people. So I'm like just like with any medical thing, there's risks and there's benefits. So. I've heard of people that have had issues from them like for the rest of their lives, so it's not guaranteed. And then the one thing about like me, most people when you get an epidural, like then they make you sit and you're in that position until you give labor or or deliver. But I was able to like still like get up on hands and knees. Like I was able to still move around a little bit, even though like I couldn't feel the contractions as much. So I don't know if they gave me a lower dose, but so some people are different too, like on that. And then
How many hours were you at when you had the epidural?
So I pushed for 3.5 hours, and I think it was like an hour or two before that. So I was probably like at 22 hours. And that was, I wasn't like in full out like active labor that whole time. It was like early labor and then slowly transitioning. Because then we had like drive-in hours, like the hour drive in the car. That's the other thing about home birth. You don't have to get into a stinking car and like drive it. Like that was the worst, because we had like the car seat all like ready. Like we ripped it out. Like I had pillows in the back seat. It was like, so that's the other thing about, like I had to go through labor in the car, which is kind of hard. But it depends on the woman too.
Did you get any sleep during that at all?
I did for like a little tiny bit when I got the epidural, but aside from that, no. And like CJ was up for like almost 3 days straight between that, because he like went to work all day, and then I went into labor like that night, and then he stayed up through the night, and then the baby was born like at 3 the next day. So that was really long. He was
What
tired.
I know, like with my home births, or not my home births, with my child births, that by the time I wanted an epidural, it was already time. Like it's too late. It's like right there, time to push.
Yeah.
So, and I know that there's a certain number. I think it's 6. You can't be past the 6.
Something like that. Yeah, I'm not sure.
But, and then they will even give you an epidural at that point.
Yeah.
So that's really probably like a pain wall for some.
Yeah.
Is that once you hit that?
Right, and I think, and some women like dilate it different. So, because like I dilated from like to a 6 to a 9 really fast, like with Eiley, whereas before I don't know how like the rate of dilation and stuff. So it's hard to know, and that's why they she told me it could be 6 hours, and she was probably right. It could have been 6 more hours, but like the not knowing is hard.
On the vitamin K, I know that you said you waited for the natural process, but did you do anything before that? Like, did you eat vitamin-rich, K foods to help with that, or did you not find that?
I read a lot of articles about it and kept telling myself I needed to, but I probably didn't eat as much as I was supposed to. So like I knew I was supposed to be, but I didn't really do too much like intensely with that.
And then also with the ultrasounds, is there a risk to that you feel like that maybe women should caution, set a caution with that? Or?
I think that there's, like I know like on Facebook recently there's a lady that like had a miscarriage because of it. So I know that there are like, she believes that's exactly what happened. And so, it is like, it's a lot of like, it's x-rays, it's all the stuff going in to your baby. And so I think there's definitely a risk involved with it. And it just depends, like I said, it depends on the person, it depends on the situation. Because I think there's definitely risk involved with just exposing your baby to all that maybe doesn't need to be exposed. So we try to limit them as much as possible. Like we only do the one, and I don't know if I'm ever going to have one again in my life because my husband.
I know I recently read where a lady had one done and she was suffering from a lot of pain, like felt like maybe they'd even hurt her spine.
Oh yeah, like pushing on. Yeah, right. Oh yeah, because they can push a lot on the baby to try and get their pictures and stuff. So yeah, there is that risk involved too. And so, because they do, like if you're a hospital and like doctor, they give them like as often as you want them, and they'll do like 8 weeks. I want to say 8 or 12, and then they'll do like the 20, and then they'll even do like a 32 or whatever. Like that's just like standard protocol. And so, yeah, with a midwife, you have more options to just do like the 1 or none. And yeah, because I think, yeah.
I'm not sure if you know the answers to this, and I know everybody has to do the research, but with the state insurance, if it is you're pregnant, but your husband has insurance, is there a calculator that you would have to go into? Is there a certain, because I know with like state care, you know.
Yeah, so there's like a table on like their website that says like the income brackets.
Okay.
And it's,
even if they have insurance,
yeah.
you just can't afford to be on their
Yes,
insurance?
yeah. So for me, CJ had insurance through work, but we couldn't afford for me to be on it. So then I got sick. So even though he had insurance through work, because it was like going to be so much a month or whatever, then based on this table of his income. And so like I don't qualify right now because he makes too much above the bracket for not being pregnant, but then once I'm pregnant, the bracket moves up. So yeah, and the more people in your household. So like the more babies we have, like the bracket, adjusts, because the more kids you have, then you get to go up higher on the bracket and stuff. So yeah, so that worked. That's what we'll probably have to do.
With the Good Samaritan insurance, if you're pregnant first, do they consider that a pre-existing condition? Is that why?
Yeah, so there's like a whole like part on their website about how if you're already pregnant, it'll go to like a special, because yeah, it's a pre-existing, because you're basically, because they know you're just getting it like to cover the pregnancy. So they'll add you to a special prayer list, because everything with that insurance is like, it's like you reimburse, like it's like a sharing of the insurance. And I think you even have to like pay and get reimbursement in some things too. And they won't cover like some of like the standard like preventative things. Like they won't cover, they'll only cover like really big things in life. They're not, they won't cover just like a basic like well check or something. They won't cover those. And so, yeah, so it's like a pre-existing, and then you can't, like the special prayer list, for the way I read it, it sounds like it's not super likely that it'll get covered. Like you would have to like really hope that like it got picked up basically. So, any other questions? Or yeah.
I know like when you hire a midwife, you have a year and like basic checkups and stuff like that. If you're like planning on having a birth in a hospital, could you still get that kind of care when they come to your house, like every once in a while, and then have that midwife there at the hospital, or do you have to use like midwives they have there at that certain hospital?
So the way that usually works is you usually would go to the midwife and see what they do, because like if you hire a midwife as like your prenatal like cover like visits, then you would just have to find out which hospitals they have like licensed to and what they're able to do. So it'll depend on the practice whether or not they can go into a hospital and deliver or not. Because I believe like Kathleen, who I use, I believe I don't think she could have just gone in. No, she could. She had like rights at like the Salmon Creek Hospital. So like she usually only used those rights to go in like an emergency case to be able to like help like during that. But I think that she could have gone in and just delivered at the hospital too.
But then like I've heard where like I've heard stories from people, friends of ours who have had babies in hospitals, and they've had, like their midwife come in and just like lay the law down to like the doctors and say like, hey, this is what they believe,
Right.
This is how they want the birth done, so that like no one else like try to like just like push vaccines or like take the baby away, so you can skin to scan the fourth planning, all
Yeah, and that is, yeah, they do like, they advocate for you really good, like on what you want and everything, yeah. And they help. And it is a little bit awkward, like in my situation, because like you can tell they butt heads, but like at the end of the day, like the midwife wins because that's the one you're paying to like do, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, they do, those are options. And with a midwife, like a lot of the prenatal visits are at like their offices too. Like they don't do the home visits until towards the end of your pregnancy, like 1 or 2, just to like feel.
Like, have a midwife that you like have.
Yeah. 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 And then probably like based on your midwife, they might even come like visit you like at your house afterwards too and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So, anything else?
Just one last thing.
Okay.
Sorry. And you might have already said it before, but you have a written plan, right? A written plan for like emergencies and transport. They do all that with you?
Yeah. So I didn't have like an actual like written thing like at my house, but we had discussed it like towards the end of pregnancy, and like she had like something typed up like that was in my file basically
okay, so
to go.
You don't have to worry about that, like once everything's going, in your labor, and they're like, okay, this isn't right, board's right, whatever it could be, and they can't do something there. I don't know what they're limited to, but
right.
Then they know exactly what to do with you, where to send you.
Yeah, so they go over that with you, yeah, like in your like final week visits on like where, yeah, to have. And I know that it's a good idea. See, I wasn't prepared enough to do this, but I know it's a good idea like to have that like physically yourself too at home. But yeah, so I think they kind of recommend that you have it, but they also usually have it with the midwife and stuff. Yeah. And there are some things that you'll have to like, forgot to mention this too. They do like the, because like the hospital, if you have a hospital, but they'll do like the birth certificate and all that, like, and they send that all off. And the midwife does the same thing. Like the midwife will like fill that out, and like you'll fill out part of it, and then like, she'll send it off and do like the birth certificate for you. And then you have to submit the paperwork to like if you get like a social security card for your kid and stuff. But that's like all involved. And there'll be different waivers. Like I had to sign a couple waivers saying like that I refuse vaccinations. Because even like for the pregnant woman, they like push a lot of vaccines these days, like the flu vaccine, all this kind of stuff, which then is really harmful to like the baby inside of you, but they like think that that'll prevent certain things. So that like sometimes you have like sign waivers and stuff like that with the midwife too. Like saying you deny certain pieces or whatever. So is that all? Okay. Can I get down now?
The thing that stuck out to me most on that is the contact that you were able to have with Eli, with Eiley right away in that time, uninterrupted.
Yeah.
I don't think any woman can realize that until they have a hospital birth, probably versus a home birth, because they do take the baby from you for so long, which is also how Josh got the vaccine injury. Was just during that time because they're so programmed to just shoot your kid right away that Aaron didn't even have time to like read the paper.
Well, and they're so, I mean, like they go through like hundreds of births, you know, a year. So like they're just programmed to like do everything automatically. Like especially the nurse, they kind of take charge, like this is my job and I just do it. You're just like another check on their list that morning. Yeah. So like CJ had to be like really adequate about making sure that he went with the nurse to go do like the heel prick and stuff with you, like to make sure that he was always with the baby. Because they would have just, they're like, oh, well you can just relax and rest and we'll just take the baby. And he was like, no, like I'm going with you. So you have to be on top of it because they will, especially like, I would just say like if you do a hospital birth, like your husband needs to know what's going on because so much, especially like after birth and like if you like end up like me, like you're just kind of like, you're like in a total like woo state because like once you go into labor, it's a really intense situation and like everything disappears around you. Like you're just focused on like having this baby. And then once you have the baby, you have all this oxytocin that like spreads in your body and you get really happy and really joyful and it's like, that's a great experience. And then if you're not like, because you're usually, like you're not really worried about like what's going on around you, but you do need to be able to be aware because they'll just like sneak in and do things and and they're not sneaking, that's just what they're used to doing. They're just used to the, you know, good old fashioned, this is what we do with the baby and we go through the routine.
And that's what the nurse told her and she's like, well, everybody does. So
yeah.
I thought you were. And it's like, once they did it, they couldn't take it back.
Right, and yeah, so you have to like be really on top of making sure that you're aware and question everything they're doing because they're not used to that.
Said, like the fight takes place, like you could, like what Kylie was asking, how, you know, can you have your midwife there? You can, but once you're in the hospital's area.
Yeah, that's true. Your midwife does leave. Like, I mean, she leaves like after, you know, the baby's born after a few hours, and then you are by yourself, you and your husband, like with the hospital staff. And like she came back in and checked the next day, just like she would at home. Like they come back the next day, but there's definitely a few hours where it's just you and your husband and the baby and like the hospital staff. So. And
the doctors can assert them just like that. So if they feel that, well, you're incompetent, they're just moved right out of the way too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you just have to really like know your stuff and like know and be able to be assertive on like what you want. And yeah, because remember because doctors have a really good way of acting like you just do what they say, whereas like I said, like you hire them, like they are serving you no matter what they think. Like, so, and knowing like, we didn't push it very much. Like we had to stay for the 24 hours and I really just wanted to go home and like CJ wanted to go home, but we had to like wait until they have like a whole checklist of like things that you have to do and the baby has to do before you can leave. But then I also have known women that if you just sign off and say like, you're not liable if my kid dies and like say, see ya, like I'm leaving, like knowing that's something that I didn't realize we had more authority than I thought. Like we could have just left with our baby, but I didn't think about that because I hadn't been in a situation like that to know to say that or to, so, cause you don't have to do everything they say basically.